From Lisbon, this is Frontlines and Backrooms Brief, the key stories shaping our world this week and the commentary that makes sense of them.
This week in Frontlines and Backrooms Brief, US President goes for new grabs, this time territorial. Israel Security Minister claims 100 doctors are ready to carry out executions. Algeria demands apology and reparations from France over colonial crimes. And Ukraine proposes demilitarized zones and territorial adjustments in latest peace offer. Plus, this week in commentary, we are examining most ominous shift in US Latin American policy in decades. Welcome to Frontlines and Backrooms Brief. Up until now, in international politics, there were three ways to take someone else's territory. You could conquer it, annex it, or take it at the green table. This week, a new method was introduced by US President Donald J. Trump.
We need it for national security. We have to have it.
No, this is not about a traditional US adversary. It is about an ally, a NATO member state. And yes, President Trump wants their territory. The territory is Greenland, which is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. When President Trump first floated the idea of acquiring Greenland, most people assumed it was a joke. It was not. This week, President Trump appointed a special envoy to Greenland, Republican Governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry. His mission: to make Greenland part of the United States. Don't take my word for it, check Governor Landry's own X account. He described the appointment as an honor to serve in a volunteer position to make Greenland a part of the United States. He went even further, writing, "President Donald J. Trump is absolutely right. We need to ensure that Greenland joins the United States. Great for them, great for us. Let's get it done." How exactly this would be done? Well, no one knows, because Denmark has been very clear: Greenland is not for sale. Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen described the appointment of Landry as deeply upsetting and warned Washington to respect Danish sovereignty. Speaking to Danish broadcaster TV2, Rasmussen said, "As long as we have a kingdom consisting of Denmark, the Faroe Islands and Greenland, we cannot accept actions that undermine our territorial integrity." Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen responded more cautiously. He said Greenland is willing to cooperate with the United States and other countries, but only on the basis of mutual respect. The European Union reacted quickly. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen posted on X that EU stands with full solidarity with Denmark and the people of Greenland. Greenland, home to around 57,000 people, has enjoyed extensive self-government since 1979, although defense and foreign policy remain in Danish hands. While many Greenlanders support eventual independence from Denmark, opinion polls show overwhelming opposition to becoming part of the United States. Strategically, Greenland matters. The island holds vast, largely untapped mineral wealth, crucial for the green energy transition, including rare earth elements, lithium, graphite, zinc, copper, gold, iron ore, and uranium, as well as potential oil and gas reserves. President Trump insists resources are not the reason. He frames Greenland as a security necessity, citing Russian and Chinese activity around the island. And yes, they are there, mostly for trade routes. Russia recorded 97 Northern Sea route transit in 2025. Chinese presence is harder to quantify, but it is significant. And if you think President Trump forgets, he doesn't. Just 2 weeks ago, Denmark's Defense Intelligence Service issued an extraordinary assessment, listing the United States as a potential threat for the first time in its history. The report warned that Denmark is facing more serious security challenges than in many years, accusing Washington of using its economic and technological power even against allies, and of threatening military force. 2 weeks later, the message from Washington is clear: President Trump is back, and he is back for the grabs, this time territorial. 100 doctors are ready to carry out executions. No, this is not opening line of horror movie. This is a claim made by Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who told the Knesset committee that more than 100 doctors have volunteered to participate in executions of Palestinian prisoners, if proposed legislation authorizing the death penalty is approved. The remarks were made during a heated session of the Knesset's National Security Committee debating a bill introduced by Ben-Gvir that would allow for the execution of any prisoner convicted of killing a Jew. Under the proposal, execution would be carried out within 90 days of sentencing using lethal injection. Israel's Medical Association has previously stated it would refuse to participate in executions. Ben-Gvir dismissed this, claiming doctors has volunteered directly. He also claimed the Shin Bet supports the bill, arguing that executions would increase deterrence. The comments sparked fierce criticism. Einat Ovadia, Director General of the Zolat Institute for Equality and Human Rights, told Ben-Gvir, "The death penalty is not punishment, it is murder." Ben-Gvir responded by accusing critics of supporting murderers and Hamas. Meanwhile, Palestinian prisoners' rights groups report worsening conditions inside Israel prisons. The Commission of Detainees and Ex-Detainees Affairs says detainees in Ofer and Negev prison face medical neglect, shortages of vital medicines, inadequate hygiene and systematic mistreatment. Field visits documented lack of clothing and blankets, degrading searches, collective punishment, and constant restrictions. The Commission described these practices as serious breaches of international humanitarian law, holding Israeli authorities fully responsible for the safety and well-being of detainees. Algeria's parliament has unanimously approved the law declaring France's colonization of the country a crime and formally demanding an apology and reparations. Lawmakers standing in the chamber wearing scarves in the colors of the national flag chanted "Long live Algeria," and they applauded the passage of the bill. The legislation states that France holds legal responsibility for its colonial past in Algeria and the tragedies it caused. The vote comes amid a deep diplomatic crisis between Algiers and Paris. Analysts say that while the law is largely symbolic, its political significance should not be underestimated. Parliament Speaker Ibrahim Bougali told the state news agency APS that the vote sends a clear message both internally and externally that Algeria's national memory is neither erasable nor negotiable. The law lists what it describes as the crimes of French colonization, including nuclear tests, extrajudicial killings, physical and psychological torture, and systematic plundering of resources. Beyond its legal language, the move functions as a powerful political signal. Every accusation listed in the bill is grounded in historical record, but the timing and the unanimous, highly theatrical nature of the vote point to a broader strategic purpose. Algeria's leadership is facing economic pressure and domestic dissatisfaction. By legally defining colonization as a crime, the government shifts political focus outward, placing France in a binary position: acknowledge guilt and face demands for reparations, or be framed internationally as refusing accountability. The move is symbolically potent because France's long-standing reluctance to fully confront its colonial past leave Paris exposed. President Emmanuel Macron's previous attempts at reconciliation gestures without formal apology or reparations now appear insufficient. By transforming history into binding legislation, Algeria ensures that the colonial question remains not a closed chapter, but a live instrument of diplomacy, leverage, and national cohesion. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Kyiv is willing to turn parts of the Donbas region currently under Ukrainian control into a demilitarized zone, provided Russia also commits to keeping its forces out of the area. The comments mark Ukraine's most significant territorial concessions so far, as Zelensky faces mounting pressure from continued Russian military advances and from US President Donald Trump, who has pushed for a ceasefire with Moscow. Zelensky also proposed the creation of a second demilitarized zone near the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, Europe's largest, which is currently under Russian control. The proposals are part of a 20-point peace plan aimed at ending the war in Ukraine, a plan Zelensky said on Tuesday has the backing of the United States. The shift in tone is notable. Zelensky, who once vowed to reclaim every inch of Ukrainian territory, is now publicly floating demilitarized zones, not as a preferred strategic outcome, but as a response to narrowing options. Russian advances on the battlefield, combined with uncertainty over the future of US military aid under a potential Trump administration, appear to be reshaping Kyiv's calculations. Strategically, the proposal seeks to reframe Ukraine's position. By offering a demilitarized zone, Zelensky presents Ukraine not as a defeated party seeking relief, but as a potential security guarantor for Europe. Yet, the risks are clear. The proposal blurs the line between a temporary buffer and frozen conflict, an outcome Moscow has long favored. If Washington is quietly backing this approach, it would suggest a shift in Western priorities, from liberation of occupied territory toward containment and risk management. Zelensky is not negotiating only with Moscow, he is navigating the reality that his allies' political patience may be eroding faster than Russia's military capacity. And in this week's commentary, we are examining the most significant and most ominous shift in the US-Latin American policy in decades. The Trump administration is pouring military assets into the Southern Hemisphere: warships, surveillance aircrafts, special forces. At the same time, a new strategic document from US Southern Command labels transnational cartels an existential threat. All of this unfolds as pressure on Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro, reaches a boiling point. So the unanswered question is, are we seeing a new militarized war on drugs or the opening moves of potential intervention in Venezuela? Let's start with the official narrative. It's simple and politically potent. The cartels are winning. They're flooding the United States with fentanyl, fueling violence and corrupting states. The Pentagon's strategy treats these networks not merely as gangs, but as something closer to a hostile state. That framing matters because it justifies budgets and deployments. We are seeing advanced naval vessels assigned to counter narcotics missions, and P-8 Poseidon aircraft designed to hunt Russian submarines now tracking narco-subs. Politically, it is 2 for 1. Law and order messaging paired with a real public health crisis. Supporting tough-on-crime leaders across the region fits neatly into this narrative. It's the Reagan's-era war on drugs, updated with 21st century technology and a Trump-era scale of force. But geography and history point to a darker interpretation. This build-up isn't limited to Pacific trafficking routes. It is concentrated in the Caribbean Sea, Venezuela's immediate neighborhood. First, the language. The strategic document doesn't just mention cartels. It explicitly names Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua as malign actors. That is not natural analysis, it is threat framing. Second, the force. Destroyers, amphibious ships, and enhanced special forces presence are useful for interdiction, but they are also the tools of blockade, air defense, suppression, and forcible entry. You don't need Poseidon to chase seaboats. You need it to monitor military communications and ship movements. Third, the timing. The maximum pressure campaign on Maduro has failed. Sanctions hollowed out the economy but entrenched hardliners. The Juan Guaido strategy stalled. For some in Washington, escalation becomes the next lever. This build-up could be meant to make Maduro blink, or it could be laying the groundwork for a casus belli, a crisis justifying a limited intervention framed as restoring democracy or preventing collapse. And this would not be the first time. In 1989, the US invasion of Panama was justified in part by drug trafficking charges against Manuel Noriega. The temptation is clear. Venezuela is a failed state, sitting on vast oil reserves inside America's traditional sphere of influence. But it would be a trap. Venezuela is not Grenada. It is not Panama. It is a country of 28 million people with a loyal military corps and armed militias. The terrain is difficult. The infrastructure is broken. This would invite insurgency and humanitarian catastrophe, destabilizing the entire continent. The idea of a clean victory is dangerous fantasy. Regionally, the backlash would be severe. Latin America would see it as 21st century imperialism. The OAS would fracture. Decades of goodwill would evaporate. Globally, Russia and China would seize the narrative and the opportunity. They could escalate elsewhere, calculating that Washington is distracted and compromised. NATO allies would face an impossible choice, and many would choose principle over loyalty. The transatlantic rift would deepen. So where does this leave us? The most dangerous feature here is strategic ambiguity. Washington doesn't have to choose between the drug war and the regime change stories. It is leveraging both. The ambiguity is the strategy. We are not watching an inevitable march to war, but we are watching the construction of a launch pad. And the world is calculating whether the launch is aimed at shadowy cartels or at the heart of Caracas. The stakes could not be higher for Venezuela and for the future of regional sovereignty and international law. And at this festive time, let's bring a bit of light into the world. Christmas has returned to Gaza and Bethlehem. In Gaza, the Holy Family Church lit its Christmas tree for the first time in 2 years after Israel's war on the Strip. On Christmas Eve, worshippers packed the main prayer hall. Many were joyful not only because it was Christmas, but because they were still alive. The Holy Family Church, the only Catholic parish in Gaza, holds deep symbolic meaning beyond the Strip. Throughout the war, the late Pope Francis called the parish almost daily, maintaining a direct line with the besieged community. In Bethlehem, Christmas celebrations also returned in full for the first time since the war began. Hundreds gathered in Manger Square, believed to be the birthplace of Jesus. A towering Christmas tree decorated in red and gold sparkled beside the Church of the Nativity. And reminder, this Sunday, December 28 at 8 p.m. GMT, we release episode 2 of Frontlines and Backrooms, Echo Chamber, the Media and the Gaza War. We examine Western media bias, framing and narrative power with award-winning journalist Sharif Abdel Kuduz and Dr. Dina Matar, professor at the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. And that's the world this week. From the Frontlines and Backrooms, I'm Vladimir Bobetic, and until next time, keep looking beyond the noise.